The higher up you go in leadership, the fewer people will tell you the truth. And yet, your entire company depends on your ability to communicate it with absolute clarity. Because when pressure hits, markets shift, investors doubt the direction of the company, or your team questions the strategy, people aren't looking for motivation. They're looking for clarity they can trust. And the leaders who rise aren't the loudest or the most charismatic. They're the ones who can steady a room, focus a team, and move people to act even when everything around them feels uncertain. I'm Ben Rosner, and for 15 years, I've helped leaders across the military, Fortune 500 companies, the United Nations, and high growth startups master that exact skill, communicating with authority when the stakes are high. Because when you can project calm, conviction, and clarity at the same time, people will do more than just follow your plan. They will trust your leadership. And in this video, I'm going to show you the system I use with leaders to build authentic executive presence so that you're trusted and followed while staying true to who you are, not becoming a caricature of what a C-suite leader should look, sound, or act like. Today, you'll learn how to diagnose how you're actually perceived, calibrate your delivery to match audience, context, and message, and systematize your communication so trust compounds over time. Before you get a complete handle on this, leadership communication can feel unpredictable. And I know because I've been there myself. Some days your message rallies people, and other days the same words fall flat. After you apply the system, you'll know why and exactly how to adjust in real time. You'll stop wondering whether people get it because you will see them executing on your strategy faster than ever before. By the end of this video, you'll know how to speak with the kind of clarity that inspires trust, aligns teams, and drives performance, especially when the pressure is highest. This is the authority formula, how great leaders communicate and build authentic executive presence. Let's get right into it. The authority formula is how to build authentic executive presence. And the hill that I die on, okay, of all the things I believe, the core premise of what I bring and I believe that is true is that the best leaders are the best communicators. And when I say the best communicators, I don't mean the most outgoing. I don't mean the most charismatic. In fact, one of the leaders I admire most in this world, it's a general, and he barely spoke in meetings. But just like the best leaders, and therefore the best communicators, when they open their mouths, it has impact and it moves people. That's what it means to really be a great leader and a great communicator. And so here it's trying to figure out the intersection of being a fantastic leader, a fantastic communicator, but also to be able to bring your true and authentic self to situations. So more importantly, how to be an authentic executive. And the way that I like to define things, because again, I love to define every single thing that we discuss. For me, an authentic executive is someone who brings their best self to a professional setting, not a performative self. And so when I say best self, I want to be able to distinguish that because at this point, the word authentic, it means nothing. It's quite bullshit at this point. So what do we mean by authentic? Certainly, as a leader and as an executive, it doesn't mean bringing your emotional baggage and your problems and dumping down on the people around you. That's not what's going to empower them. It's not what's going to help them understand you. It's not what's going to help drive them towards the outcomes that you want. And so we need to be able to both bring our true identity to work so we don't feel that we're being performative. This is not a performance, but at the same time, we need to figure out how to bring our best self to work. And that's going to require clarity, and that's going to require an understanding of how to communicate extremely well. And so when we think about, okay, so to be an authentic executive, I have to bring my best self to a professional setting, not a performative one where I pretend and I act like a caricature of what a C-suite leader should look like. I understand that I then therefore need authentic executive communication, which is the combination of credibility, clarity, and connection. So again, this isn't about being performative. When you get this right, it's about leading with credibility so people believe you before you speak. You want to be able to communicate with clarity so that your message lands cleanly and confidently every single time. And lastly, we want to be able to build connections so people trust you. When we have all these three intact, we can become an authentic uh, executive communicator and ultimately ladder up to becoming a proper executive um, from an authenticity point of view. And so this is critical because what we want to be able to do today is match intent, message, and delivery, make them align so that you can become an authentic authority. So let me go a little bit deeper and define what it is that I mean by authenticity. Because again, it is such an amorphic term, overused today, and ultimately means nothing. So the way that I define it and the way that we're going to be using it is a confluence of three things: what you believe, what you say, and then what you do. When those three components exist simultaneously, we have achieved true authenticity. So what does that look like? Let's take Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JP Morgan Chase, as an example. Regardless of how you feel about him, he really does embody all these three things, and he is an authentic executive at the highest level in terms of what he believes, what he says, and how he acts. So for example, he strongly believes that the best workforces, the ones that are most creative, the ones that can get the right output, the ones that will serve the clients of the bank the best, are the ones that actually show up to work 5 days a week, not working at home, not having this disconnection. And regardless of how you feel about that or how I feel about it, that is what he believes. And so he checks the box for taking a core value and bringing that to the fore. And he makes that known with what he says. So you may recall that there was a Zoom call where he communicated with the entire firm, and he used really explicit language. And the long and the short is that he said, look, if you don't like it, if you don't like how we operate here at JP Morgan, there's the door. We are going to build the workforce that's going to serve our clients the best. And that means you have to show up to work. And so he wasn't worried about the fallout from that. He wasn't worried about losing people because he followed up what he said with what he believes. Now, could he have said it better? Maybe. But the point is, those two are in alignment. And then lastly, he walked the talk. He ended up investing $2 billion of the company's money into building an office building, a massive, massive building in Manhattan, to be able to bring people together in a way that, from his point of view and the architect's point of view, is collaborative, makes people want to be at work, and makes it a place that can ultimately thrive. And so that's an example where someone is really being authentic to themselves. He believes that the workforce needs to be there 5 days a week. He communicated that incredibly clearly, and he followed that up with action. And so if we can do that, if we can bring ourselves into a professional setting and have all these three align, that can make us an authentic executive and just authentic, period. And so that's how we define it today. That's how we're going to be using it. And to be able to achieve that level of authenticity, to become an authentic executive, there are going to be three stages that we need to go through. They are awareness, calibration, and consistency. Each one plays an important role. So the first thing we want to do in the awareness stage is to diagnose the signal. And so what we want to be able to do with that is to, first of all, identify the authority gap, meaning where you are today versus that ideal authentic executive and authentic communicator, and where that gap lies. What is that we need to work out to improve? So tactically, that means we're going to need to run perception diagnostics, and more specifically, that is feedback, recording reviews, and stakeholder input. And the focus of what we're going to have in this stage is that we're going to want to spot any type of recurring patterns in how you show up, all the different small issues. So for example, do you over-explain? Do you rush when you speak? Do you have very soft conviction when you are communicating? Or do you even just avoid the awkward silences that exist? These are things that we want to be able to figure out. We have to understand where we are today to get to the ideal state of where we want to be tomorrow. For calibration, we want to tune the signal, meaning we want to calibrate the way in which we convey to be as powerful as possible. And so that means the goal will be to adjust delivery to align message precision with audience resonance. So how clear you communicate and how well you're able to convey your conviction. Tactically, the work that needs to be done is to refine delivery. So how you communicate, the tone, the pace that we use, and then using the three calibration lenses. So the way in which we evaluate any situation, we need to evaluate context, audience, and then the delivery. Those three things together, that's going to put you in a really great spot. And so the focus will be understanding how do we bring the right level of energy and expression for the room. So different situations, whether we're talking to a board or media, it's all going to be different, right? So we want to come off as decisive in the boardroom. We want to be measured with media. We want to be relatable with teams, as an example. Once we have understood where we are today, how we to improve the signal we put out, the last part will be to provide um, a system by which we can be consistent with the signals that we put out. And so that means building habits that ultimately make everything reflexive, okay? Makes clarity automatic. And tactically, that means practicing under pressure, using feedback loops over and over again, running quarterly perception audits, and repeating your messages until they become instinct for you. It doesn't become something you have to think through, but it becomes instinct. And so the focus for this particular stage will be ensuring that message behavior and emotion align. That's really important. Align under stress so that you show up predictably as an authority no matter what. Same as you show up the same in calm as you do when there is chaos. So let's jump right into it with the first stage, which is to understand uh, how we diagnose the signal that we put out. So there's quite a bit here, but let me walk you through it. This is a grid where on the y-axis, we have high message precision. That's here. On the x-axis, we have audience resonance. And I want to go through each one and what they mean, because again, I think definitions are really important here. So when we talk about message precision, we're talking about how clear, structured, and disciplined your communication is. That's what message precision is. For audience resonance, it's how much belief, trust, and follow through your communication inspires. And when we get both of these things right, we're able to measure that's really important, measure the clarity of thinking you convey and the conviction you transfer, which together create perceived authority. That is why this is so important to understand how these two things interact. And they help us identify the kind of leader that you are, the kind of leader that anybody is, at least when it comes to communication. So let's go through that here. And we'll go from what I consider the worst to the best from an authority perspective. So first of all, we have the absolute worst part of this grid. That is the bottom left. And that is a low trust leader. Now, a low trust leader is one where there is no clarity, no confidence transfer. And so people leave confused or indifferent whenever this individual communicates. And that's not where we want to be. And so some of the signs that you can see from an individual who is a low trust leader is that they ramble or they speak a lot in jargon or they really just lack conviction in what they're saying or any direction in which they're pointing people towards. And so you leave really confused, completely unclear, and you don't know what is expected of you. And this person is just speaking in terms that sound right because they're corporate, but don't really mean anything, and you're not sure how to action on them. That is probably the worst place we can be because that has both low message precision and then low resonance. The second is being a charismatic improviser. Now, this is someone who shows up with a lot of charisma, a lot of energy, a lot of excitement about them. It's someone that inspires briefly but creates confusion later. And it is energy, but without any type of specifics or alignment. Now, they might come in with a very motivational tone, but ultimately vague promises and inconsistent follow through. And I have someone in my mind clear as day. When I was at the corporate communications agency in New York City, where we were working for Fortune 500 clients, and I was advising so many of them. We had one of the leaders from the London office who would fly in, and he would just swoop into the office full of charisma and energy and talk about all the great things we're going to achieve together and how we're on the right path and the impact that we're making. And it sounded amazing in the moment. And, you feel very inspired. But 5 minutes after he left, we were looking at each other thinking, uh, what are we supposed to do now? Like, how are we going to action on this? It was just motivational bullshit, quite frankly. So we don't want to be a charismatic improviser. It's not going to help anybody. It might make you feel good, might make people feel good, but for 5 minutes, it's not going to help them actually achieve the goals that you want or action on the strategy. Then we have a detached expert. Now, a detached expert is someone who is very logical, but there is no emotional conviction in what it is that they're saying. So they'll come and say, okay, here's what we have to achieve. Here's the strategy. Here are the actions that we need to take. But there's no energy there. There is no conviction in what it is that they're saying. And they're not able to inspire people to take the actions that they need to and feel connected to the mission. And that ultimately, while they are super knowledgeable, it's what earns them respect, but they're not followed. They're not people who earn the loyalty of both internal employees or external stakeholders. They'll bring people in, but they won't last very long. And similarly with customers, they won't want to be associated with the company. And the way this shows up in the real world is that they're very data driven, constantly in what it is that they are communicating, less so when it comes to any type of anecdotes or stories or any type of emotional connection. You might find them overly formal in how it is that they speak and communicate, and they're very, very low on the empathy scale. So if something's wrong or something's happening, or if there's a big major transformation of the company or a crisis, they'll treat it in a very cold manner. They won't bring any type of empathy to the situation or understanding or help people understand that they care. So that is a detached expert. Lastly, we get to the place that we want to be the most, and that is to be seen and viewed as an authentic authority. And someone who is a proper authentic authority, they have both high message precision and high audience resonance. Okay. And that means that the clarity of their communication and the conviction that they communicate are both aligned. It also makes them authentic as a person because what they believe, what they say and do all reinforce trust. And that is one of the most powerful things that we can build in companies. Trust in the leader, trust in the team, trust in the mission, trust in the vision, trust in the strategy. And having high message precision and high audience resonance is what gets you there. And so the way that you can see that in leaders who embody authentic authority is that they have very crisp messaging. They have a visible conviction. They really believe in what it is that they're doing and saying and building. And they have consistent behavior in any situation, calm or chaos. You know exactly what it is that you're going to get from the person. They don't change. They're not a chameleon. And so what we really want to do is figure out how can we move from wherever we are on this grid to be here in the top right quadrant. So we want to ultimately move into this area as quickly as we can. And the way we can do that is to become strong communicators. And that's where the second part, the second stage comes in. And so we want to tune the signal that we put out there. So there are 5 components to becoming a very strong communicator. They are clarity, confidence, credibility, connection, and consistency. I'll go one by one, the question to ask yourself, the descriptor, and then how this shows up in the real world. So the very first thing, when it comes to clarity, the question to ask yourself is, can people instantly grasp what it is that I mean? If they can, that means you're clearly being clear. And what this really means when it comes to a description point of view is that there's logical structure, you use concise language, and you have a clear hierarchy of ideas, meaning the way in which you put information together, how concise your language is, and the structure, they all come together to create that clarity. And so the way that shows up in actual communication, use short sentences. You have a really strong framing of a situation, and you repeat the key points again and again so that they come through. When it comes to confidence, the question to ask is, do I project certainty without arrogance? Now, it's a fine line, but people, to feel confident in what you're saying, need to see that you're confident in what it is that you're communicating. And so the way that this comes about is that we need to ensure that voice, pacing, and conviction transfer belief. Because if it doesn't seem like you believe it, why should I believe it? If you don't care, why should I care? If you're not excited, why should I be excited? You're leading this, you're building this, you're the one with most of the equity. Prove it. And so the way that shows out is that these kind of leaders, they have calm tone, purposeful pauses in the way that they speak, and then they have an upright posture. So you can tell that they're really confident. Then there's credibility, which is asking yourself, why should anyone believe me? And this is where ultimately authority is built from evidence, experience, and authenticity, which is, again, the combination of what you believe, what you say, and then what you do. And so what we end up wanting and the way this shows up is really strong storytelling that's backed by both data and lived experience. And you might remember from a past video that we define storytelling as the mechanism by which we convey a series of events that has a beginning, middle, and end that ultimately delivers a lesson or a realization. And so the ability of a strong communicator is to be able to pull out storytelling whenever they need to, so that they convey a lesson or a realization that they need people to act on. And that would have a combination of both data that they can point to, but also their lived experience. And that's what's going to lend them the really strong credibility, because they know what they're talking about and they can also show that it applies to them and their life. Then there's connection, which is, does my message resonate with this audience? Okay, so obviously a leader has to speak with so many different stakeholders: board, media, employees, customers. And so the question is, does this audience, will they resonate with the specific thing I'm saying? And so there needs to be a situation where there's empathy and attunement that is relevant for that specific stakeholder. And when we get this right, you'll have this feeling that the audience, they just get you. And it's just such a freeing and powerful feeling when there is that connection with whomever we're communicating with. So that's what it feels like. Lastly, there is consistency, which is, do my words and my actions align over time? And so what's really important here is what's called behavioral integrity, which means the same signal across different contexts. So while we do need to tailor the message to the specific audience, right? We're going to say, where there's going to be a different focus rather for a board or a team versus customers. But the same core message. So for example, if the focus is scaling, we're talking about scaling in a way that is relevant for each of these audiences. We're not talking about scaling to one stakeholder and to another. We're talking about how we refine processes. No, it's about growth. It's about scaling. It's about dominating the market. And we want to be able to be consistent. And when the way that shows up is that people know what to expect when you speak. Over and over and over again, that consistency is what ultimately creates belief. And this is all critical because when we get these 5 components right, they end up having really strong benefits for the leader. In particular, clarity earns attention because people want to listen to you. Confidence earns belief in what it is that you want to do. Credibility is what earns trust from people, and it's one of the strongest emotions that we can elicit from others because that's what helps us move faster than ever before. Connection earns loyalty, so people stick around and they want to be part of what it is that you're building. And consistency is what earns influence because people know, okay, I believe what this person is saying and I can act on it because they're not going to change 5 minutes later. And so that's why all these things matter to become a strong communicator. And these 5 things sit under what we talked about before, which are the 3 lenses by which we have to evaluate any moment that we communicate. Those 3 things are context, audience, and delivery. So let's go through each one of these lenses. So first, we go through the context lens, where the focus for us is to match the message to the moment. And so we want to ask ourselves, what is the venue? Where am I communicating this? So is it a boardroom? Is it a town hall, media, or investor meeting? And as importantly, what outcome do I want from this? Do I want to reassure people? Do I want to create a sense of urgency? Do I want to inspire? Each one of these, they have to match. So where am I speaking and what outcome do I want? That's contextually. And so the shift that you'll see when this is done right is that the content and the tone will feel right for the stakes and the moment. It's super, super important to be able to match these things and make everything align. The second is the audience. And we want to be able to tailor the clarity and conviction to who is listening. And so what does this audience care about? And what level of detail do they expect, right? So again, a board might really demand and require a significant amount of detail about the strategy and where we're going, what's working, what's not, and what can we try next to dominate the market. But customers might need something else. What is your product or service or offering? Why does it matter to me? Why should I care about it? These are different audiences that require different messages. And so the shift that you'll see when you get this right is that the message relevance and the precision increase, and that moves you to that top right corner from the grid that we saw before. That's where we want to get to. That's what understanding this lens helps so much with. And then lastly, it's the delivery lens, which is how we tune our personal delivery, how we improve that. And so we need to ask ourselves, how is my pace? How is my tone? How is my volume? How is my posture affecting how people receive me? And when we get this right, your presence will become confident and not performative, not some caricature, but you will feel comfortable in your own skin in what it is that you're saying and where you are leading people. These together, the 5 components and the 3 lenses by which we look at every situation, that is how we tune our signal, how we improve our delivery, and how we come across to anyone with whom we communicate. And so that is how this comes together at stage 2, which then leads us to the third and final stage, which is consistency, what we call systematizing the signal, because authentic authority is built through repetition. It's not a one-time event. This is something that we have to do over and over and over again. So how can we create a system by which we are consistent? So there are 3 components of what I'm calling the consistency core. What we need to show up with every single day and understand that it has 3 components. So the first is, in the center of this core, is emotional consistency. And that is that your tone and presence feel steady, not reactive. Our emotions dictate everything. If you are angry, if you are nervous, if you are scared, if you are calm, all of that is easily read by the stakeholders around you, your team, the board, media, anybody else. They can sense it and they can feel it. And so having control, first of all, over our emotions and being able to show consistency in how we show up emotionally in every situation is what's going to first and foremost steady the ship and make people calm around you. Then we have behavioral consistency, and that's where your actions reinforce your words. So if you promise transparency, that happens. And lastly, the message consistency, which is where your core narrative and language remain stable. So you're not changing what is it you say from 1 minute to the next, because that's going to allow people to believe you at the end of the day. And ultimately, the behavioral consistency is the connecting thread between message consistency and emotional consistency, because how you behave is a reflection of your emotional state, and what is it you speak is also reflective of how you behave. And so these 3 things work together, and the behavioral consistency is the glue between them. But the very first stage, we have to get the emotional stuff right. And there is some really strong benefits from being able to do this right, because when we have message consistency, everyone inside the organization uses the same framing, and there are no mixed messages. You don't have that the issue of cascading messages where there's distortion. You have people in sales saying the same thing as in marketing, as in customer success, as in engineering. Everybody understands what the message is, what we're trying to achieve, and how we're going to achieve it, because you said that right at the top and you made sure that it flowed through to everybody else. Then when it comes to the behavioral aspect, when you say transparency and you answer questions honestly, people know you mean what you say. It doesn't make sense if somebody communicates at a company, we really care about your feedback. We really care about what you have to say, and we want to hear from you. And then they don't follow that up with the last 15 minutes or 20 minutes of a town hall as offering a Q&A, or even at the end of the meeting on a one-on-one session. If your behavior doesn't match the message, we have an issue. And so we have to be able to reinforce our words with actions. Then lastly, the emotional part. This is so critical. This is what sets the best leaders apart, especially when I was in a military setting and in corporate settings where there were crises. And it's that people feel safe bringing you problems because you're the same in chaos as you are when there's calm. I know the exact same Ben that I'm going to be able to interact with. If I have a problem, I know that they're going to treat me the same way as if we have a daily interaction for something that's basic. When you have a leader like that, you know they have regulation over their emotions. You know that their behavior is going to match what they say. You know what they say is consistent. That's how we create a consistency core. So that is what we need to think about bringing every day. More tactically, that's going to require the consistency habit loop. which are things that you can do on a weekly and daily basis to improve the way in which you show up. So the very first thing is I call it revisit, which is to reread key messages weekly. It doesn't help to create fantastic messaging, which is what language we use that conveys our corporate narrative and conveys our positioning to a specific stakeholder. It doesn't matter if we've done it one time and now I know how to speak to the board, I know how to speak to investors, I know how to speak to the media and to our employees. It doesn't help if that sits in some document and stays static and you never look at it again, because then you forget and then you feel disconnected and there's no conviction and you can't communicate it well. So by rereading those messages at the top of your week, whether it's Sunday or Monday, it doesn't matter. But at the start of your week, every single time, what are we saying? What do we need to convey? What I need people to know and understand, because that I understand will transfer and create belief. That's what we need to revisit every week. From there, we want to be able to repeat key messages across venues. So we say the same core message tailored to each audience, but we say it again and again and again and again. That will transfer the belief once you communicate. Then we need to reaffirm and ask ourselves, did my actions match my words? Did I promise transparency and follow through with it? Or is there now some type of misalignment between the behavior that I'm exhibiting and what it is that I'm promising people? Then we want to regulate, which is notice your tone under pressure. Am I calm? Am I that steady force? Or am I leaking stress? Am I leaking that I'm concerned? Because that is going to be captured by all of those around me. Then lastly, might be the most important, is to rehearse, and that's to practice delivery. One of the things that I have to say pisses me off more than anything is this misconception that executives have and leaders have, where they think, okay, well, if I, and they tell me this all the time, Ben, if I practice too much, if I read this too many times, I'm going to feel over scripted and a robot, and therefore I won't be authentic because I'm not bringing my authentic self. That is complete crap. The more that someone practices, the more that they rehearse, the more that they ingrain this in themselves, the more authentic they end up coming across when they do communicate. The reason that people come off and feel robotic is because they'll read something 2 or 3 times, and then when they try to communicate it, they're actually working really hard to remember, wait, what was it that I was supposed to say? What was that exact word? What's that message? And so it doesn't come off with true conviction. You don't believe it. It's hard for you to communicate it. You might be less clear than you want. You might ramble because of it. You might provide and insert jargon to make up for the holes that you have in the gap of your memory. But if you do this and you practice this 100 times and you do it over and over and over again, it just becomes ingrained and part of you and natural. And the thing is, it's not just in leadership that you see that when people practice, they perform. Just look at Kobe Bryant. He was one of the most dominant basketball players on earth. And he didn't just show up to a game and start hitting threes. He practiced more than anybody in the game. He would practice multiple times per day. And there's this incredible story where he would show up to the gym at 5 or 4 in the morning. And then he saw that someone started showing up at the same time as him because he wanted to emulate him and mimic the work ethic that he had. And so Kobe then started showing up at 3:30. And the other guy who would show up came and asked him, hey, why are you showing up earlier? And Kobe's response was, because I'm going to be the best and I'm going to show you that no matter how hard you work, I will outwork you and I will do better than you. And that's why when he showed up to games, it seemed so effortless and so easy, and why he was so much better than everybody else. And it is no different when it comes to communication and to be able to work on it. Because if you can do it 100 times, you can start ad-libbing. You can start be feeling more comfortable in what it is that you have to say, because you're not thinking, but you're acting, and you're not robotic and you're not inauthentic, because of what you're going to be saying, what you're going to be doing is in alignment. What you believe in your core values will match what it is that you say and will match what you do. And if you take control of your communication and you actually start believing what it is that you want, you will stop being a caricature. You will stop being robotic. And so I cannot stress this enough. I cannot stress enough how much practicing matters. And so if you want to be the best, you have to put in the time. And if you want people to move towards action, this is where you have to invest your time and efforts. So when we put all these things together, we figure out, where is it that we fit on the spectrum. How can I become an authentic authority? When we look to tune our signal and figure out the 5 components that make a strong communicator, and then help us tune how we communicate through the 3 lenses of context, audience, and delivery. And when we figure out the system to put together to be consistent in how we communicate, that is how we can ultimately become the authentic authority that we want to be. That's the authority formula. And so this, I cannot stress enough, this is one of the best places to invest the time and effort and resources so that you can lead your team in the way that you want, but you can also do it on your terms and feel that you are being true to yourself. And again, not some caricature of what a leader should be. So I hope you found value in what it is that we talked about today. If you want to stop feeling like you're a caricature and you want to bring that authentic executive presence to work, reach out to me on Instagram. You can DM me 313, or you can message me on LinkedIn, and we can take the issues that you have today and address them so that you can become the leader that you want tomorrow. Uh, for next time, we're going to be discussing messaging architecture, which is how do we put together information from our corporate narrative and our positioning and communicate it to our stakeholders in a way that is so easy, that is so clear, and that is so logical that people automatically resonate with it. It has a high message precision, and that you can become the authority that you want to be. And so I'm going to put that video somewhere up here. And until next time, keep leading with clarity.